everyone, and eventually we are online. Um, and Today we have a very special guest with us. And as always, I'm giving a little introduction at the beginning of our interview. And so, who is David Dibble? He's a true seeker of the law of nature, universe in general, with focus on business forces, leadership, management, culture, and change models. With decades of experience managing organizations with more than 100 people, he created a new model for systemic change. For systemic change that connects minds and brains of employees and system, transforming stress in the minds to kindness. The model demonstrated positive impact on businesses with impressive outcomes, increased net profit, frontline workers' satisfaction, improved nursing retention rate, decreased number of days at hospitals. His influencers are the greatest minds of humanity, such as Ilya Prigozhin, Edward Deming, Peter Senge, and others. Please welcome David Dibble.
Well, hello. How are you today? So happy to be here with you.
So I know that you developed your own model, the model of a systemic change, the model that help basically hospitals and healthcare organization to manage stress at workplaces, and to manage basically change. Let's start from early beginning. Why you even decided to go that direction? What made you, to be interested in this particular application, this particular field?
Well, going way back, I had a powerful spiritual experience in February of 1980. And I basically went from being a somewhat disillusioned young business person to becoming a bit of what I would call a seeker. And I was interested in the really big questions. Who are we, and why are we here, and how does the universe work? And this got me into a bit of a deep dive into Eastern teachings, Native American teachings, some into physics. And it also put me in touch with two really amazing people, W. Edwards Deming, who is probably the #1 quality systems improvement expert ever. And the other was Ilya Prigozhin, who had won a Nobel Prize for his law of dissipative structures in 1977. And it was really the connection with the work of these two amazing men that got me on the path of becoming a systems expert, and also in the start of the creation of this new model for change in the workplace.
The interesting, when I was reading your book, I found so many fascinating quotes, and one of them, it says, I believe you wrote it from your heart, from the personal experience. We seemed to have no time to do things right, but plenty of time to do things over. So what is I'm trying to figure out what was the major forces, what the major issues you thought you have to address at work, regarding to the management at workplaces, regarding the current well-known approaches. What do you think, what was not working from your perspective?
Well, one of the things that I think was one of the most powerful principles that Deming shared with us is that about 94% of the outcomes that we get in the workplace, both good and poor, are a function of the systems or workflows in which people work, not the efforts of people. And so, most of us we've been taught as managers and leaders that it's the people who are creating the outcomes, and that we want to get the best people. And if we have the best people, we'll get the best outcomes. But what Deming showed us was that that's not true. It's actually the systems that are creating the outcomes. And that if we want to improve outcomes or create good outcomes, we have to have good systems. And so this is where, plenty of time to do things over, no time to do things right, comes from, our training to basically look at people and tell them, do better, as opposed to, doing the systems work so we can set them up to create better outcomes.
So the most fascinating thing that I noticed about your entire approach, you literally connecting like very deep scientific theories to the business environment. And the entire idea of focusing on humans. So your entire approach to develop puts a lot of attention on actual workers, on the frontline workers. And that's the entire idea, that you're paying attention towards the stress of frontline workers as the major factor or a major force that actually can be influenced, it can be put in order, it can be transformed into kindness and positive business outcomes. That, I believe, makes your idea very fascinating. And as I understood, that has a lot of connection towards the theory of Ilya Prigozhin. I know that when we spoke a couple of days ago, you explained me a lot about the law of deceptive structures, right?
Yes.
That's the thing is, Ilya Prigozhin has it's a well-known name in physics, chemistry, mathematics, but not in the business environment. I believe you're the first person who decided to move this name to the business environment. Can you please explain, for God's, how possible it can be? What is the application of Ilya Prigozhin theories to the business environment? Can you explain your perspective?
Yes. Well, when I ran into Prigozhin's work, he won the Nobel Prize for the law of dissipative structures. And the law of dissipative structures is probably, in my opinion, the most important natural law that is at work today in the human experience globally. And the reason I say that is because the law is actually very simple. What it says is that all systems have a certain amount of energy that comes into them and a certain amount of energy that they can dissipate. And when those two things are about the same, you have a stable system. However, in a changing environment, systems are called on to change, but they don't. They are naturally programmed to resist change. And it turns out that resistance to change is part of the law of dissipative structures that describes how the universe changes. And so resistance to change requires more energy coming into the system than the system can dissipate. And this creates stress within the system and dysfunction within the system. And as the system continues to resist change, we have more and more stress energy coming into the system until it reaches a point where the system itself can no longer contain that stress energy. And it enters a phase called reorder. And reorder is basically the flying apart of the system. Now, the energy is still there, but you can't identify it as a system anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then over time, the energy comes back together, coalesces, comes back together, and creates a completely new system operating at a higher level of functionality within the changed environment. And now it can handle all of the energy coming in, and it's now dissipating all of that energy, but it's working at a higher level of functionality and is again stable. And so this is how all systems and subsystems in the physical universe and how all man-made systems, it's how they work. It's how they change. And so I started looking at the law of dissipative structures as it related to systems change in the workplace, and saw that, oh my gosh, we can actually use the law of dissipative structure to accelerate change, both at the level of physical systems in the workplace, but also at the level of a systemic human mind. And so this kind of goes back to something I learned from the great Buckminster Fuller. He said, every thought is a system. And so that meant the human mind is systemic. And so now we have human reality, which is systemic in the physical world, and we have in the mental world, or the level of the mind, that also is systemic. And guess what? They're both at the effect of the law of dissipative structures. And so we can look at transformation of both at the same time within the right model.
So, as I understood, according to this perspective, any business environment in the any challenging situation considered to be as a system in a stress. As a stress, basically any business environment facing any challenge can be considered as a system in a stress. And we basically need to we have to apply specific forces that would shape, transform the system in something more, as you said, new level of system, new level of organization that would be able to handle the stress, the challenge in a more appropriate way.
Yes, it's virtually unknown in the workplace, but system stress is passed on to the people that work in the systems as both physical stress in the body and emotional stress in the mind. And that's actually the primary cause of the new pandemic of burnout that we're seeing in the workplace in general around the world. It's stressed workplace systems. They're basically being stressed because they aren't changing. And so that stress causes dysfunction within the systems. That stress and dysfunction is passed on to the people, and that we have basically, a very stressful workplace that is not good. It's not good for outcomes. It's also not good for people.
You know what? The big part of your influencers, of course, that they are the greatest minds of humankind. But from my perspective, what I found out that every single of them, they trying to find, basically connect spirit, basically mind and brains. I mean, even Ilya Prigozhin, if you would, there are actually his interview available online from 1998 or something like this. And he was talking a lot about that current science as actual lack of the modern theories that would explain everything that's happening in the reality. So the thing is, all those approximations, all these simple theories like Newton theories, they are not real. I mean, they worked for simplified world, and currently they outage themselves. So they, if we're talking about more comprehensive systems, and he actually give an example of like social life, like a society, that those type of organizations, I mean, those type of law, they are not actual anymore. And we really have to come up with something more, you know, something that would help us to find an order in the chaos, in the stress system, as you said. And he's actually talked a lot about his influencers. In his during his time, there were like several physicists that tried to apply law of from biology, Darwin's, for example, theory, to the physics. There are so many experiments up there already, like just trying to figure out how to find an order in the chaos. And the entire idea that you decided to brought those thinkers to business environment, I think it's very fascinating, very unique, and definitely deserve all the attention. Another thing is, big part of your influencers are really focusing on the spirit, especially the Migul Rus, right? Migul Rus. I could pronounce it wrong. You know, please forgive my Russian.
Yes, Don Miguel Ruiz.
Ruiz, yes. I never heard about this particular his work before, but he puts a lot of attention to the spirit of humanity. I believe, just before going to the more detailed talk about your theory, your model, let's talk about this person. I believe it's I never heard about him before. So he's focusing on spirit, right? So can you please explain a little bit what kind of influence this person brought to you? Like what did you find interesting?
Yes. Well, I had been studying Eastern teachings and Native American teachings for about 10 years when I ran into Don Miguel Ruiz. He's actually a medical doctor, an MD, and he had come to the United States basically to sort of share what I would call ancient wisdom. He called this wisdom Toltec wisdom. Toltec actually means a person of wisdom, and it was a group of seekers who came together a little over 1,000 years ago and put together what was called this body of knowledge or wisdom, which was all about transformation of the human mind. And
for healing purposes, right? Like for healing. Like,
yes.
Okay.
And matter of fact, that's the reason that he left medical practice, because he realized that Western medicine didn't heal people. And he wanted to actually heal people and make the world a better place. And so he went from medical medicine to what I would call spiritual medicine. One of the things that Don Miguel became famous for was a book he wrote called The Four Agreements. And The Four Agreements, I think the book itself sold 4 or 5 million copies. I mean, he became very famous for a period of time here in the US and actually around the world. The Four Agreements were 4 simple agreements that he said we should follow these agreements if we want to gain our freedom, basically freedom from the fears that live in the mind. And the 4 agreements were: be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and always do your best. So very simple things. And people thought, well, those are things that we are supposed to do, but they really aren't. They are things that we are supposed to become. And so this is that transformation that he was teaching about, really transforming the parts of our mind, thoughts, beliefs, and memories that are based in fear, to thoughts, beliefs, and memories that are based in love and kindness. And in doing so, we, of course, completely transform our lives, because each individual's mind creates that individual's reality. In other words, we identify with our minds. We say, I think this, I believe that, I remember this and that, when actually it's the mind that does those things. And so this whole practice is around the transformation of the mind from basically fear to love and kindness. And in the process, of course, we change our lives from being fear-based in many ways to being based in love and kindness. And that really became everything that Don Miguel was teaching. Now, there was one thing that is really, I think, important in this, is the distinction between the mind and the brain. A lot of researchers in particular have put the two things together. They say, well, here's the brain and here's how it works, and this is where thinking comes from, and this is where our beliefs come from, and that sort of thing. But they are actually different. The mind is made of physical energy. The brain, the brain is made of physical energy, and the mind is made primarily of emotional energy in the form of thoughts, beliefs, and memories. And the brain is basically a transducer of emotional energy to physical energy, primarily in the form of electricity, synapses firing, and in chemical reactions, and then back again. So in other words, something happens in the physical reality, and the brain transduces that to emotional energy in the form of thoughts, beliefs, and memories. So we've got these two things going back and forth all the time, creating human reality. And so this idea that both these things are systemic, both the mind and the brain, and that we can use the law of dissipative structures and some of the principles that Don Miguel was teaching to accelerate the changes that we want to make in the world and to heal.
That's amazing. That's amazing. My question, what do you think is more important? Physical part, brain, or emotional part, mind? What do you think more impactful, more has a lot more power for us as a human?
Without a doubt, the mind. Without a doubt. The mind, for practical purposes, creates our reality. You know, we have on the planet today 8 billion different mindsets. And each one of there's no two are the same. And so what we have is 8 billion different realities. And so you have to ask yourself the question, well, what's reality? And the answer is, it's whatever you make it. And so I even heard something recently, I had to laugh. I was listening to actually a very wise spiritual teacher. And he was giving a talk, and he said, I've almost come to the conclusion. He talks a lot about physics and the universe and this sort of thing. He says, I've almost come to the conclusion that there is no universe unless we dream it. And I started laughing, because that's exactly what the Toltec teachings say, that we basically are creating everything inside out, basically in the mind first, then it gets projected onto the physical reality. And so I started laughing. I went, oh my gosh, it looks like science is Western science is beginning to catch up with Eastern science or spiritual science.
Quantum mechanics, the outcomes will always depends on the viewer. So very
Yes.
depends who look at or the eyes of who sees it.
Yes. And it's why no two researchers can look at the same phenomenon and see the same thing.
Yes.
Consciousness literally changes that which is
And now,
being observed.
and a very, very important things. Talking about, I believe that's before moving to the to the real. You know what fascinating? Regarding you mentioned the scientists who put a lot of attention to systems and the environment. So we are so sensitive toward environment, toward people. So really, a lot people around us, one way or another, participate in the creation of our universe, right? We know that there are multiple studies be done like around students, where we know that if teacher choosing a particular like telling to a particular students they're good, you know, they will make it, those students are doing much better. That
Yes.
maybe more talented students, but who not getting that much attention from the teacher, or who doesn't look that promising from others, and they can be more,
Yes.
a lot more talented, but they didn't have a chance. They didn't have the appropriate environment that would help them to thrive, to demonstrate their abilities. So we know that the environments and people around us create like tremendous impact on us, on our future, on our vision. And you mentioning a lot Edward Deming in your book, and the entire that he was the first one who actually put so much attention to the system in systemic change, because your entire book, your entire vision, very like it relates to the putting of, in front of the eyes actually system in the environment, right? So why did you you already mentioned that a couple of times, but can you please explain more? Why do you think we have to work with system most and foremost, more than with individual, more than the workers, more than we have to work with the system in general?
Sure. Okay, so let's start with the biggest picture. If we look at the physical universe, what we see is that it is made of systems and subsystems from very large features, such as galaxies or clusters of galaxies in deep space, all the way down to the quantum level. And in nature, 100% of the things that we experience are a function of those systems and subsystems. Now, when the human mind gets involved in creating human-made systems, let's say like the workplace, like healthcare, like education, like government, you could go on and on. All of the things that we have normalized in the human experience as human-made systems, the percentage of outputs that are a function of the system drops to around 94%. That's Deming. And now, but that's still a huge percentage. In other words, we've been trained that people create outputs, but they don't. It's the systems that they work in and that they live in that create those outcomes. Now, at work, it's the systems, it's the workflows, it's the processes. At home, it's the same, but we don't call them systems. We call them habits, but they're the same thing. In other words, how you brush your teeth in the morning is a habit that creates 94% of the quality of the brushing that you do on your teeth. You're not even aware of it because it's on automatic now, but it's still there as a system. And so we see the same thing happening in the workplace. We've had these systems that have been around for a while. They've been resisting change. So the law of dissipative structures is stressing these systems and causing dysfunction in them. The people working in them and the managers and leaders don't know anything about that. So they are basically cracking the whip, saying, do better to the people, which of course is even stressing the people out more. And so we're basically doing all of the wrong things in order to try and make our businesses better and to make our people
Even more
better.
putting them in the stress, like trying to
Yes,
handle.
yes. As a matter of
Okay,
fact,
so
one of the biggest things that leaders and managers have been taught is cost cutting. You know, they say, okay, we're going to cut our costs, but they don't know what their costs are. So what they do is they cut price. They look and they say, oh, well, it costs us this much for staff. Let's cut staff. That'll cut our costs. Oh, we're going to take away resources. That'll cut costs. But it doesn't. What happens is it stresses systems more, causing more dysfunction, which raises costs. And so, like, for example, in healthcare, we have been cutting costs all the time in healthcare for 25 years, and we have the highest costs in the history of healthcare. Why? Because we don't cut costs, and also because managers and leaders don't know how to maximize profits, because they're focused on the people and not on the systems.
it's okay, let's move. So everything you said is absolutely clear and so important and so fascinating. Let's move to the actual model. So explain to us, what are the main agreements? So first of all, why did you call it agreements?
Well,
yes.
we actually call the model 3D, and it's 3D, and then we call it change management, 3D healthcare, 3D problem solving. Basically, however we are going to apply the 3D model to change. So, for example, the first three tools in the 3D model are discovery, distillation, and defining. This is where the 3Ds come from. And this is really important because if you look at the traditional systems-based models for change, even going back to Deming, you will see that almost the first thing that is required, whether it's Deming or total quality management or Lean or Six Sigma or Lean Sigma, all of these various programs, the first thing that they do is collect data from the existing systems to see if they can figure out where the problems are in the systems. Now, the problem with that is that it does not address the people side of the problem, basically the stress in the people. And so even if you fix the systems, the people will then sabotage those systems and go back to doing what's comfortable for them. And this is what has happened over the last 40 years, even with really, I think, good models like Deming's. It didn't work on the people side, it only worked on the system side. And sustainable change is two halves of an integrated whole. One half is systems change, but the other equally important half is growth and healing in people. And we have to do both of them at the same time. So when I started looking at, all right, well, what does this new model have to include? It had to include both halves of this model. And so instead of collecting data from the systems as the first thing, what we started with is collecting emotional data from the people through the 3Ds, discovery, distillation, and defining, where we basically ask the people, what are all the problems and stresses and things keeping you up at night that have to do with the job or the company or anything? and we're going to get them all out. We're going to list them in your own words where everybody can see them. And that's discovery. And discovery can be run it can be run one-on-one as if you're coaching, for instance, or it could be run in big groups of hundreds of people. If you're working with a large organization and you want to get started turning that organization around. And so you ask them that question, what are all the problems? You're basically gathering the stress energy that's been passed on to them from the systems. And then what we're going to do is reverse engineer that stress back to the systems that created that stress. And now we'll know where to work on the 20% of the systems creating 80% of the stress and dysfunction.
Makes so much.
Yeah. So we discover, we get it all up there. Then we move.
So, a little bit. So, when we talk about discovery, you mean that it's just simply questionnaire? So you basically doing surveys, or what do you think? What is the best way for how procedure looks like? It's like more questionnaire, or it's a specific combination of the tools you developed? What do you mean by do you discover?
Discover is just, it's so simple. All we do is we make sure we get the question right. You have to get the question right to get the outcomes that you want, which is the collection of the stress energy that people are feeling. Notice it's emotional energy, it's stress energy. And in some cases, it'll be physical energy too, but it'll be expressed in emotion, like, yeah, I'm exhausted. So the body's exhausted, but it's expressed in emotional energy. So we get the question right, and then we do the setup where we say, okay, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to ask the question, and one at a time, each of you are going to respond, hold up a hand or whatever. We're going to call on you, and you're going to respond, and we are going to write down in your own words how you describe that particular problem, stress, thing keeping you up at night. And we're going to put it up. And we're going to go until everybody who wants to has expressed this. And when we are done, the room will go dead quiet. You'll be able to hear a pin.
Group. It's part of it sounds like a group therapy.
Well,
in psychology.
In many ways it is, because the first part of healing is to basically
have a chance to express.
Yes, get people express and to tell you what's wrong. It'd be the same thing like if you go into a therapy session, well, this wouldn't be considered therapy, but you go into a therapy session, the first thing somebody probably is going to ask you is, well, what's wrong? Tell me about it. And so we just ask them.
Didn't work for me.
Yeah, but we're doing it with the group generally. And so we get it all up there, and already you can begin to feel people relax, and people go, oh my God, I was heard. I know, because there are my words up there. And then other people will say, I was going to say that. Now we're starting to build
up there.
We're starting to build the teams who are going to do the work already. And then we go to the second tool, which is distillation. And we say to the group, and this is done in a smaller group. You can't do it in a large group. Probably the largest group you'd want to do it in is around 15 or 20. But it also can be done, with a single person. You say, okay, let's group these issues into similar categories. And I'd normally start off say in the upper left-hand corner of this large list, and I would give it a color, red. I'd just color it red. I'd say, okay, I'm going to give this thing the color red. What are the other issues you see up here that you think we probably ought to kind of put in the same category and color it red? And then you let the group tell you what they think, and you let them hash it out. And it's okay if it fits in one or more than one category, and it's okay if it doesn't fit in any category, it's standalone. But what you'll have at the end of this process of distillation is you'll have a set of categories. Will generally be between 4 and 12, depending on the size of the group. And you give those categories a name, let the group name them, and it will be normally, a word or two or a short phrase. And then you list the names on the wall where everybody can see them. I normally do it in the colors that they've given them. And then that takes you to the third D, which is defining. And you say to the group, and this is really fun for the facilitator, by the way, you say to the group, all right, we're only going to work on one. What's it going to be? And they go crazy. What? They want to fix everything. You can't wait a minute, but what? But you just, it's like emotional chaos, at least at the start. And that's fine. A lot of emotional energy in the room. And people are, going back and forth. And I think this and I think that and everything. But as a facilitator, you're just letting it play out. And when it starts to calm down just a little bit, you'll say, okay, start asking questions. Well, I think I heard that this may be the most important one. What do you think? And you throw it back to the group again. And eventually they will come to a consensus. Important consensus. You don't let any one person take over. It has to be consensus. And they will give it a number 1. That's the one thing that they want to work on. Now notice, this has been decided emotionally. It's really important. You have just identified the number 1 system that we should be working on to remove the most stress from these people. And it will be the number 1 system that has passed on the most stress to these people. Now we're reverse engineered it back. And now we move on to the second part of defining. You say, okay, great job on number 1. I'm a benevolent facilitator. I'll let you pick one more. And so they go on, they define number 2, number 3, number 4, and you basically rank them. This is called Pareto analysis, if you're looking at it from a system standpoint. And so you've just ranked them from most to least, and now you know where to work. You're only going to work on the number 1 or the number 1 and 2, almost never more than 1, 2, and 3, because you can't do everything. And now you're working on the most important systems. And you can now move on to the next tool, which is right action and sequencing. And so this is normally done in smaller groups, where you say to the group, okay, so we're going to work in this particular system. We've chunked this down so it's manageable. And we will say to the group, okay, so we probably ought to now look at collecting some data on this system. Who's going to do it? Who's going to do what by when? So right action, and now you make sure that it's in the right sequence. And now basically this becomes the agenda for your follow-on meetings, and the whole process just moves forward on not only changing the systems, but also the healing process keeps going, because every time you meet, you're sharing emotional data, you're supporting each other.
And employees will be more willing, they will be more open to absorb and adjust this change, because it was something they.
Yes, well, not only that, they're doing it. This is all created on the team. It's not somebody from the outside ordering. And this is important in doing 3D work. 100% of it is voluntary. As a matter of fact, you can't be on a 3D team if you are directive in any way. If you're not a team player, if you don't care about other people, if you can't be a nice person while we go through this process, you can't be on the team.
Let me tell you something. As a founder of an organization who highly passionate about humanity and humankind rights, I just would like to mention that we highly respect authorship of the original ideas. And I will put the legal consent at the beginning of this video. Anyhow, everything being said is considered to be completely, it has copyright. I mean, it's protected by the copyright. All the ideas belong to you. It's been mentioned not just in this video, but also in your book. If you would like to apply if someone who is watching this video would like to apply this particular approach at the workplace, first of all, they have to approach David Dibble for license agreement or for any copyright agreement appropriate in a particular case. Any copying, any application without approaching the original author is considered to be illegal, not against just US law, but against the humankind law. Just a little, I mean, I really would like to say it because that's very important. And so if anyone would like to license the program or would like to somehow implement this approach at the workplace, what's the best way to do it?
Right now, it's probably just to contact me. We have a facilitator certification program. We also have a foundational training, and
It's
I'm
protected
also
by it's protected by trademark, protected by copyright, right? Did you apply for patent? Do you have any patents?
not patents, no, but trademarks and copyrights and that sort of thing. But
Yes.
I am really looking forward to training as many people as possible to take this out, into the workplace in whatever way that they want to, following their own heart, to make the workplace and the world a little better place, because I feel that's why I've been gifted this, is to, to promote it out there in the world and hopefully make a real difference.
Absolutely. So we have to mention that this method's already been applied at multiple workplaces, at multiple clinics. And we already know that it does provide positive, absolutely amazing outcomes. And we know that there are already several publications up there online. You can find it easily. So the thing is, it does, in terms of like nursing retention, in terms of retention rate, in terms of the time patients stay at the hospital, it works tremendous. I mean, it really makes the difference. So we know that it does. It's not just play game. It's not just wherever psychotherapy for your workers. No, that's absolutely not. It's the real deal. Well, David, the thing is, it really depends on the generation. What I notice, even my generation or older, especially someone like from whatever Soviet background, they consider a lots of things related to emotional thing as something not concerning, something that has to be avoided, something that too sensitive, something that you have to push, hide, or something you shouldn't pay attention to it. It's like, baby game, whatever. That's not such a thing, I'm just trying to say that that's a real thing. It really works. It's really important. And we see absolutely amazing outcomes. And for sure, 100%, as many places, I believe this type of approach is not just for healthcare, but for any other workplace, because same issues exist absolutely everywhere, because people are everywhere and people are the main driving forces. And as always, at any workplace, doesn't matter what kind of industry, usually the frontline workers, they most stressed and they get less salaries, For some, I mean, that's the law of nature. The people who are up there in the front line, they're usually the most get the most pressure and they get less benefits from it. And that's time to change. It's time to change it and really start to care, right? Start to care about frontline workers, start to care about people. And I really love the quote from your book, Dalai Lama, the way he said about the humanity, right? So it's time to not pay attention too much to the leaders, but actually to put attention to the humankind. The
Yes.
world doesn't belong to leaders. The world belongs to all humanity. Dalai Lama. That's what I wrote. I really love this approach, and there's this quote in your book.
Yes, I think one of the things, I love the Dalai Lama. I mean, he's, in my opinion, I mean, he's a great man. One of the things that has always stood out for me, I remember a reporter was interviewing him, and the reporter asked him, he said, well, what is it, what is it with your religion? What is that? And the Dalai Lama said, my religion is kindness. And I see that more and more in the world right now. I mean, I'm working with a couple of really amazing women right now who are basically looking at bringing kindness, to the world. And we're putting together a program. 3D is going to sit in the middle of it, but it's all around bringing kindness to the workplace. And,
but anyhow, yes. So anyhow, your model, your problem, it's already made. It's already great, like core. You can apply it to multiple different things. You can play around with multiple, but the thing is, you created this unique core, and this unique core can be, licensed, can be basically applied in certain ways. But the core is core. Also, as I believe you're a very unique thinker, and I believe the things the way you connected the dots, the way how you applied a lot of like spiritual thinkers, science thinkers together for the business environment, that's absolutely amazing. And my question for you is, how do you vision the future of the healthcare? What do you think, what we are heading towards? What do you think the future looks like? What do you think the future holds for us from your perspective?
well, I can only share with you what I would call the perspective that would come from the law of dissipated structures, because that law, you don't get to vote on it. It is, it's hard at work in healthcare right now. And if we do not proactively begin to improve our systems of care delivery, healthcare will implode. And that will not be a good thing for, speaking particularly for here in the US, where, we have an ever sicker population with diseases which cannot be cured by Western medicine, only managed. And that is probably going to disrupt society a great deal if we allow it to come to that point. So my thought is we really do need to, if possible, scale 3D healthcare into healthcare and globally. I mean, these problems are global.
Absolutely.
To see if we can buy time to make the changes that we need to in the king of all of the human-made systems, the profit maximization system, which rules all of humanity, but which is not sustainable. The law of dissipated structures is working in that too. And, just imagine where humanity is going to be when, nature basically destroys the profit maximization system, which is where we're headed. The human mind does not run the universe. The universe runs the human mind. We just haven't figured that out yet.
When I was watching interview with Ilya Prigozhin, so it was like 1998, but it's amazing. And he takes so many amazing things about like human brain. And he says the same, he said basically that any idea, it's already up there. We just feel like we figure out it's in this, really, it's an environment. It's the way how we're putting things together. It's not something, it's any idea, new things, it's not really new. There are lots of like prerequisites. The entire environment creates this new thing.
Yes. I mean, we live, we all know this. We live in in a physical environment that basically circumvents or surrounds the planet. And so, you can say, oh, there's the atmosphere that surrounds the planet. And then, there's within that atmosphere, there's all of the physical reality, and it's all connected. You can't find any place where it's not connected. But we can also say the same thing for the emotional reality of, the mind as well. These are energy fields which are created, and there are no energy fields in the universe, both physical and non-physical, that are not connected to everything else, because that's the nature of a systematic reality. And so, if you're paying any attention at all, you can see that like thoughts, it's not like there's one thought here and that's not that same thought somewhere else. We all know that the great breakthroughs in science all seem to happen at about the same time in different places. So we have Einstein in one place who, has a breakthrough, and then all of a sudden, somebody else has a similar breakthrough somewhere else. One person, runs a 4-minute mile, and, it's like very quickly, all sorts of people are running 4-minute miles.
Einstein called it an ether. He called it like global universal ether. Like we get information. He has his own vision. He's very. I mean, we know that even physically, Einstein has like very different brain structure. He has very unique connection between right and left sphere of the brain. And the way when people asking him about how he like vision things, how like ideas come to him, he says he thinks in music. And according to this, his physical structure of the brain, it could be like really real thing, because he has very tremendous, the connection usually is really small between two left and right part. And he has like really, in Russian it's called mozolistое тело, the connection, this real bridge between two spheres. So he has very unique, he had like physically a unique brain. That's why he had this different.
Yes. Well, I think is a corpus callosum, right? That's sort of is between the left and right brain. And yeah, it's really interesting when you see significant differences in that part of the brain where either there isn't the separation as much, or whether there's a complete separation.
Oh yes.
That sort of thing. So
it's interesting.
Yes, I think so too. And then of course, we've got the mind-brain connection too, and there's going to be things that are very different about that as well. So yeah.
Yes. So let a little bit going a little bit slowly to the completion, finalizing our talk. So tell us a little bit how we can find you. So you have your website, right? We know that. Give me a second, because I, with my little presentation, I actually, here we go. So you have your website, right?
Yes, thenewagreements.com.
So basically, if people interested, they can go directly to your website and ask if they need any question, any assistance, any whatever. Talk to you. They literally can contact you via website.
Yes, and I'm on LinkedIn. It's at David B. Dibble. I'm actually fairly active on LinkedIn, but yes, I would love to speak with anyone who is interested in this, because you know, I've been at it for a long time, and I actually was told in a very powerful dream about 5 or 6 years ago that I was to take this out into the world in a significant and meaningful way, and that it would make a real difference in the world. And so it's taken me about 5 or 6 years to sort of get to the starting line to do that. And so I kind of feel that's where we are now. You know, it's
Well, trust. I mean, it was there was one very significant scientist, brain scientist, Natalia Bekhtereва, Russian. And you know what she did? She actually she proved scientifically that all those dreams, they matter. They matter, and that they are very important. And I believe 100% that you're going to the right direction. I was absolutely impressed with all your ideas, with all your book, with all your findings. And I wish you all the best of luck. And I believe you will succeed. And I believe you will find a lot of organizations, corporations, clinics, you know, healthcare providers, not healthcare providers, will be willing to incorporate your ideas at their workplace. Anyhow,
well,
everyone is welcome. And yes, thank you so much for your time. It was absolutely amazing and impressive talk. And
well,
I'm grateful from bottom of my heart.
thank you so much for having me. You are a beautiful and wonderful being. I love you. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, bye bye.